Well, I kind of came up in that tradition, working at some tourist attractions when I was young. So,
That's,
but I,
what,
you know,
so that, what kind, you mentioned in that write-up that unfortunately I just took one page of it. It's lime something, lime soda, glass, and another one. What are the two different, I didn't know there were that many, I'm sure there are many more glasses, huh?
there's literally hundreds of thousands of them, you know, and they have different characteristics. They have different expansion and contraction rates. So, like if you took pure quartz, which is sort of a glass, that would be 0 expansion and contraction if it's heated up or whatever. And then probably the next major group after that would be borosilicate glasses, which are like Pyrex you could use for laboratory glass working, put it into the oven for cooking, things like that. So this is about 96, and that's kind of a good general soda lime glass.
So the difference
And then
is,
there's this.
they're all silicates, right?
Yeah, they're all silicates. They just have different additives to give them different characteristics. And then the other one that's really interesting, I don't really like to work it that much, but I haven't worked it a lot, is the Japanese glass, which is a soda lime glass, but it's called Sataki, and it's like 130 something coefficient. So when you work it and get it hot, it's almost like soup. It's like honey, you know what I mean? It's like so soft. You can make a water glass that doesn't have any potash or lead or anything to stabilize the glass. So literally, if you get water glass wet, it just dissolves. So you have to have a stabilizer with the lime and the soda and what other ingredients. You need something else that kind of holds it together and gives it some archival.
So the stuff when it gets to like soup, that would be the stuff you pour into molds.
Well, you can do that with anything, really. It's just it's different temperatures and acts differently. We pour this kind of stuff into molds a lot. This is my wife, Sally, over there.
Hi, Sally. I saw you last night at that lovely lecture.
Well, we appreciate you coming.
I did a video of, there's a place in New Jersey called Gillander Glass.
Oh yeah? Where is that?
It's in Port Jervis, and they make, they go back to the 19th century.
Oh yeah.
And then they through the 1900s and everything, this is up, this is down. And what it's devolved into, they make a huge percentage of the glass insulators that you put on telephone poles for wires.
Right.
So I watch them. They have the cooling sheds and all. I mean, and the guys work in teams. They're paid by unit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's amazing how they turn it out. It's another. They're all variations on a theme, aren't they?
Right. Well, you know, New Jersey is probably one of the main areas in the United States for glass on an industrial scale. Because I teach up there, and go up there sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I mean, some of the factories have closed, but there's still a lot there, and they make laboratory glassware for science.
Yeah,
So
learning the different words, like for beaker, you know.
Yeah.
God, those get so complex.
Yeah, I never really did too much scientific work. I really didn't have that much interest in it, to be honest. I mean, I think it's fantastic, but it's
Well,
more,
it's a totally different mindset, isn't it?
yeah, it's almost more like you're an engineer, although some people can bridge that gap sometimes. The only thing I've ever done is like repair some scientific things a little bit, but not really much anymore.
So is there an element of surprise in the colors that you get here compared to like in ceramics?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, you know that you kind of know what they do, and you kind of know how they interact with each other, because that can cause a lot of cool things, surprises. So what, I had to there's hundreds of colors that are compatible, and you have to learn how they interact with each other. The chemical composition of it may interact with the chemical composition of another color in a strange way. So there's that to consider. Not only that, but they have a real different what we call viscosity, even when heated. So that there's a difference in the viscosities of the colors, most likely in most instances because of the chemical makeup of it. So they can be softer and harder, and so therefore they work differently. And if you're working with a soft and a hard color, it's not so much an example of compatibility, it's just the viscosity of it is so different that one can push against the other. So learning to deal with that is an issue.
Is the different cooling times a factor in that for different kinds of glass?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. And they have different annealing temperatures. So, glass should be annealed primarily. So when you anneal things, it takes the stress out, and then it's brought back to, room temperature. You put it in a kiln or annealer.
But here you're all at one temperature, or can you do different temperatures with that flame the same?
I can.
all the time?
I can change this flame quite a bit. I'm going to in a minute, actually. Actually, at home I have another kind of torch, or I have other torches, but I use a softer torch that just has gas and air.
What's this one?
This is oxygen and
Acetylene?
propane. Acetylene is kind of too dirty of a gas for glass.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Generally, people use, over the years, there's been all kinds of fuel. Over the hundreds of years, there was different, they didn't have propane, they used other kinds of things. You could use whale oil and, all kinds of, but you always have to have some air to it, or oxygen. In this case, I have an oxygen tank there, so. And the air or the oxygen augments the fuel and makes the flame hotter.
Right.
So for example, this is something I've done and I try to show people. Sometimes if you took a candle, just a candle, and you got it going, and you had thin, maybe a little bit thicker than those pieces of glass that are pulled out into stringers. If you took those in a candle, it might you might be able to bend it. But if you blow your breath over the top of it, it's like a Venturi valve, that augments the flame and makes it hotter just going. and then you can actually fuse the glass in a candle.
Wow.
So that's kind of crazy.
These
Because
are
that's not very much heat, obviously.
No.
You know? But
these are all the tricks of the trade, so to speak,
Yeah.
that you've learned since 14.
exactly. So like it's very interesting, the different fuel sources. I worked at old-fashioned table at the Corning Museum up there in New York, and the way that flame workers used to work, they still actually, there's some in existence. They have a bellows system under the table, and it's got like a diaphragm. So they pump this bellows, and the air compresses in the diaphragm, and then that air augments the flame. And what I was working with was just alcohol, just
That's interesting.
some kind of alcohol, and then the air being pumped in.
But that would be a lower temperature.
Yeah, but it's enough to heat this kind of glass.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting. I mean, I wouldn't want to work like that now, but I think there's still some. I was in China a little over a year ago, and I was teaching over there and participating in a big festival, and there was a guy about my age that actually still had one of those things, that owned the company, a big company, and he was making stuff using the bellows, which is crazy, you know, that they still had that.
Do they have somebody to pump it for them?
No, he was pumping it himself. I think I'd rather have somebody pump it for me, honestly. No, he was pumping it himself. And he was making cigarette holders, these fancy cigarette holders, because he liked to smoke. And I guess that was something that he did when he was young, I suppose. He was about the same age as me. We couldn't talk to each other, but we understood each
You
other.
could communicate.
It was kind of funny because I saw this guy. I'd been there for a few days, and teaching at this factory, and this guy shows up in a beautiful BMW. And he gets out, and quite a handsome, elegant guy, dressed all in black. He gets out of this silver BMW, you know, and smoking. I wonder who that is. That's the owner of the company. Oh, okay.
What city were you in?
This was in Herjin. It's kind of north of Beijing. I was in Beijing and Herjin and just outside of Shanghai. I had a show. This was kind of like, they had a lot of glass companies in this place.
Have you worked in Vietnam?
No, I haven't.
They're very creative.
I wouldn't mind going there. Some of my friends went to, I do a lot of international glass festivals, but they were just in Thailand. And, you know, they were posting some photos from there, and I wasn't that aware. I'm pretty connected to glass communities around the world, but there's some places that you find out about that you didn't really know. I've connected with the Chinese and the Taiwanese and Japan, and as far as Asia goes, and then Australia, all places in Europe. I know some guy that makes incredible beads in Africa. It's like hundreds of years old, of this technique where they make glass beads. They pour them into a mold. They use spit and they grind up glass that's been recycled, like glass bottles of different colors. And they grind it up, mortar and pestle at the end, and then they use their own spit to put it together. And then they make these beads with it. It's kind of crazy.
This,
He comes over to the United States sometimes and does like these big jewelry, bead kind of shows and stuff. And I think that technique is at least 700 years old or something like that.
it's a huge group of women, mostly women in the United States, making the beads for necklaces.
Yeah.
Glass beads.
Well, I taught a lot of those women, some of the famous ones back in the early 90s. I taught a lot of those women. And
My wife makes a lot of necklaces.
it's quite a thing. It was more popular probably 10 or so years ago than it is now. I think it's waning a little bit. But, you know, that's everywhere. There's things waning, coming in, you know.
Well, the glass, first, as far as historical and stuff that jumps into my head is the Venetian glass.
Right.
Now, why is that all of a sudden so special? In the Renaissance, obviously they had the people there and they sort of got all working together?
Right. Well, you know, it really came into Venice from the Middle East. That was like Egypt and other areas of the Middle East and Asia, and went to Murano. So they've had a really solid tradition for over 1,000 years now. And I have a lot of friends there, and I go there every couple of years or so.
So it's still going on there?
It's going on, but it's not doing as well right now.
Well, they're sinking.
Well, besides that, I mean, yeah, they're sinking. No, it's more got to do with just world trade. You know, if another country like China or some other place can make things cheaper, or they copy things, then that's what happens. So, and actually there's more of a, in terms of art glass, there's more of a move away from factories making art glass. Do you remember Steuben glass?
Oh, sure. I can't believe it went out of business.
Yeah, people just don't want stuff. You know, the collectors nowadays want pieces made by individual artists more than they do.
Well, Steuben had their cadre of artists.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, they want stuff not with the factory name on it, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
They want, you know, when it became fashionable for the, you know, singular glass blowers.
Well, like you.
Then, you know, that became more popular.
Right.
People that collected that sort of stuff said, you know, I don't want to buy anything that's from a factory anymore.
Right.
I want to buy, there's more of a cachet, so to
Right.
speak, you know what I mean? So that's changed things drastically. And a lot of towns or cities that had glass no longer do. In Germany, Italy sort of declined. UK is one in particular. There's in Stourbridge, and it's near the Midlands, in England, and like they had a huge industry of like cut crystal and stuff like that. Corning had a plant there,
Waterford and all that.
and now they're no longer there. Waterford is still in operation a little bit, but only because They actually closed the factory, but they opened it back up just for like tourists, like a few glass blowers. So it's not really a factory. And that's what they've done in Germany and stuff too. A lot of these factories used to have 150, 200 blowers.
I think they still have towns in Germany where all they do is make Christmas ornaments out of glass.
No, even that's
gone?
Yeah. Yeah, I go to that place. All that went to China.
Oh, be darned.
And they actually are the ones that did that. The Germans actually said, well, we can have it made in China. They use the same molds and the whole bit.
Wow.
You know?
So are they blown into a mold so each one is the same kind of thing? Oh, okay.
Yeah, the ones that like look like Santa Claus, they're real thin and all that, they're blown into like it's sort of a ceramic kind of product, so to speak. You know, the mold is made of. Okay, stop. Sorry about that.
Get a little glass on there.
No, it's just being weird. The torch is not dangerous or anything. So yeah, this is kind of happening worldwide, you know, but it's like business and stuff, you know, it's like over a period of time, things just change. You know, and actually like Murano, for example, Murano's gone through other periods where it wasn't, you know, it was big in the Renaissance, and then, you know, it'd go through different stages. It kind of got real popular in the 1950s with modern Italian glass. And, you know, so, you know, these things are just a natural thing, but who knows what's going to happen.
You mentioned last night, I guess it must be solid glass sculptures that are as much as 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
And working with two other guys, and you made the little man.
Yep.
What's that kind of glass work called?
Well, so the sculptures I was talking about are done like this with a torch. And they do it, they lace it kind of and build up the structure from that. You know, 15 feet tall pieces. And they have a, you know, they're kind of fragile, but they're not, because they have kind of like, almost like a molecular structure to them. Do you know what I mean?
Well, how do you cool something like that slowly?
They don't.
It's just so thick.
I mean, not the big ones, you know, maybe they, I don't know, maybe they do parts of it, you know. If it's, you know, this big, yeah, they can put it in ovens, but I think those big ones that I've seen that are 20 feet or more, they're not annealed. But, you know, they're very thin things, so they're not, there's not like a lot of stress in it. It's not like it's thick, so it's not gonna. So this is flame annealing. So I'm taking, where I put that hook on that bird, I'm basically heating it up and letting it go slow through the stress point of the glass. So when it goes below the strain point of the glass, then carbon forms on it like this. And this is just a temporary measure. I mean, they have to be annealed afterwards, but, you know, in a kiln. But this is really helpful to do this. Takes the stress out. And now we're gonna put the eyes and the beak on. See, I have to warm that back up because that's been cooled now.
So that this will stick on there.
Yeah, plus it could shock and cause it to break, crack.
Ooh.
That's one thing that you really have to learn is when to apply heat and how much heat, because with any kind of glass, because it can just crack. Putting the eyes in this.
Dick Francis has one of his mysteries, which he always taught something in each book, and one is about the glass making. And
There is? I didn't know that.
Dick Francis is just wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, but I
At
mean,
one point,
he has
they
some-
get the guy by cooling it so fast the thing explodes,
Right.
you know, and it either gets him off guard or injures him or something. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was just in Venice and Murano last May again. We have a big organization called the Glass Art Society that was started up at Penland School about almost 50 years ago. And
wow.
so we have members, I don't know, between 2,000 or 3,000 or something like that. 50-something countries, 50, 60 countries. And we get together every year and have a conference. So, good morning.
I'm just saying good morning. I'm just close.
What's that?
I wasn't, I forgot you were here and I've been admiring your work. It's,
Oh, well, thank you.
I didn't bring my dog into the room.
Oh, dog-
A live flame.
Oh, no, dogs are welcome.
Is the green copper? Is that a copper pigment?
There could be some copper in it, but a lot of green is made with, usually it's the brighter greens, are made with chromium. So it depends on what kind of green. There's other things. You can even add cobalt and get, some amounts of cobalt. So the funny thing is, the people in Murano, they didn't really like having people like steal their secrets and blah, blah, blah in the factories and stuff like that. And so like, we never could have a conference there at first because they're kind of protective and I don't know, kind of in a weird way, parochial, let's put it that way. So I went over there a few times trying to sort out whether we could go there. There was the more famous people, of course, are international anyways. They don't think like that, but the local people, and they're like, everybody's gonna come and steal our secrets. It's like, you know what? You don't have any secrets anymore. Have you ever heard of YouTube? All the processes are on YouTube. It's like, we don't have those, and anyways, in the United States, see, when we started with the studio glass movement, started with Harvey Littleton in '62, it became common because of like Penland School and different institutions like that we don't have secrets, we're teaching everybody. And that's actually been a boon rather than the opposite. People think if you're secretive that, but that's not true. It's like it gives so many people information.
Like sharing scientific thought.
Yeah, exactly. It's more an enlightened way of thinking. So when we finally, after decades, we finally went to Murano in Venice last year. There was about over 2,000 of us from around the world. And they actually ended up liking it. And they said, we didn't know women could blow glass so well. Because they didn't really encourage having women. There were some women in Murano, but they had all these famous glass artists from all over the world that were women. wow, I didn't know women could do that. Yeah.
Amazing.
So that's it.
Very
Well, you
good.
got to see it.